Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know if I'll ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high, even if the sky is falling down.
All right, hello everybody. We are here for the first day of season 6 of Successfully Chaotic, and I have one of my friends, love Mary, and she has a business called Wollard Accounting, and actually she's my neighbor. She's right next door. So I'm super excited for you all to get to know Mary, but also for her to bring some valuable information to you all just about the world of money. I know early this quarter, so for Q1, we're going to be focusing a lot on just demystifying money, because for most people going into a new year, they typically have a couple of focuses, one being their health and wellness and another being their finances in one way or another. So we really wanted to tackle that. So Mary's been sharing a lot of pretty cool budgeting and saving tips that actually make it fun. And I thought that she would be a great first guest for the season to be able to kind of in a gentle way guide us into, money management. So I'm gonna let her dive in and introduce herself, and then we'll just get to talking.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. My name is Mary Wollard, and like Maria said, I do have a business called Wollard Accounting where I do a lot of financial stuff, income tax prep, accounting, payroll, and one of my personal favorite things to do is budgeting. So I actually started getting a group together with some of our friends on Facebook, talking about budgeting, how you can budget, and some fun ways to kind of make it, less of a stress or a headache to do every time you get paid. So. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got. So.
No, I love it. And you have a Facebook group too that you've been sharing. So I don't know, are you wanting to invite people to that Facebook group, or do you want to keep it secret?
No, it's okay. We could do invites too. Basically, the way I did it was I just didn't want all my Facebook friends to see budgeting tips crowd up their homepage if they weren't interested. So we started this private Facebook group. One, for the privacy so that people could talk about their stuff without it being public, and two, just so that those that are interested could join.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's been great. You've been talking a lot about budgeting. So I know, I can't even remember her name, but you've shared something from another mom.
Yes.
What's her? I can't
Yes,
remember
her name's Kamiko Love. She's the budget mom in
Miko
Seattle.
Or something like that.
She goes by Miko. Mm-hmm. Yep, she's great. So we started our own personal budgeting probably 10 years ago, a little bit less, with Dave Ramsey. And then we did really well with that, with debt and snowballing. And then what I love about Miko is that she teaches you how to do a zero-based budget based on your paycheck. And she teaches you how to have cash envelopes to kind of help with overspending, and teaches you how to do sinking funds to prepare for future expenses coming up.
Which honestly, whenever I first seen that you were talking about sinking funds, I was like, took me a minute. I am not the, CPA. I'm not an accountant. I don't know a lot of those terms. But when I started looking at what it was, I was like, oh, I kind of do that. I didn't really have a name for it. But, obviously we have annual expenses that come up. And it's easier if you're planning for those to put a tiny bit aside each week or month or whatever it is to be able to get to that point. But I never heard it. Maybe is that a common financial term, sinking funds, or do you know?
I've heard it with a couple other budgeters too. So I think it's becoming more common for it. But I don't know who came up with it or anything.
Yeah, I had never heard it. So I was like, well, so I thought it was really cool because, some of the things that you're sharing makes it fun. It's like challenges. Like,
yes.
We, like, as humans, whether you're super competitive, quote unquote, or not, we all love the idea of a challenge because we want to win at it.
Yes.
Some a little more than others, but
yes.
Yeah, I really love some of the stuff you've been sharing, and I think that it can make it something that is easily doable for anybody, no matter kind of where they're at in their financial journey.
Yeah.
You said that you got started with Dave Ramsey, which I know a lot of people, have read his stuff or been a part of his stuff, or at least know who he is. I mean, he's a pretty well-known name out there. I know my husband and I had done Dave Ramsey program many years ago, but I did find that it didn't quite work for us because we don't live the W-2 9 to 5. Like, our finances is far more complicated than that. So I actually got super frustrated on trying to do it that way. But I know a lot of the stuff that I've seen you sharing seems like no matter what your income level is, or if you're self-employed, if you work the W-2, it's still something that you can kind of put into effect.
Yes. So one good thing with Miko is why I had loved her was that she actually is self-employed too. She's her own business. And so she just gets paid once a month, and that's how she runs everything through. So she's doing a monthly budget. But the way that she was doing it with her steps, you could pretty much tie it or combine it with any type of pay period, any type of pay schedule, or even income that any person has. So.
Absolutely. So whatever when you're doing your budgeting, I mean, you don't have to obviously give us complete details and a view into your financial world, but just high level, when you're doing your budgeting, what do you find is helpful as far as, when you got started, what was the easiest step to get started with that? Because if you've not been, if somebody out there right now is not budgeted ever, it can seem like this giant task to take on.
Yes. So the first thing that I would recommend for anyone that's wanting to get budgeted, whether simple or huge, is just to start looking at your finances. So the first thing that I did was I looked back. Like, I always kept a check register. I know a lot of people don't do that nowadays. I mean, my brother and sister-in-law don't, but look at your check register or start tracking your spending. So do a month's worth. If you don't have a check register to look back, see what categories that you're spending them in, and then kind of go from there. Your paycheck, typically, if you have a W-2 paycheck, you would know about a good estimate of what it should be every pay period. Then you've got your fixed expenses, whether it's your house or your rent, your vehicle, your insurance, things like that. And you know that those have to be paid by a certain due date. So from there, you can kind of track or cut back on any of your variable spending. So you might see that you're eating out tremendously, in that 1 month period. What can you do to cut back? Or grocery shopping or clothing shopping, anything like that. And then that will kind of help you to where you can find extra money within your budget from each paycheck.
And I know another thing you've been sharing a lot of is savings challenges. And I think those are really cool. Yes. I love challenges anyway. I do. And I love any kind of an excuse to kind of get that out of my system. And I can do that and save money at the same time. I think are great. Yes. How do you factor in savings into a budget?
Okay. So what I do is if someone's on a really tight budget, but they've got excess in regards to eating out or groceries or even your gas or clothing fund, is try to look to see where you can cut back on those items. So a couple of the money saving challenges that I had put into our group was like the 52-week challenge. And you can Google a lot of these. 52-week challenge. You've got a Christmas savings challenge. They're doing a 100 envelope challenge. And that's where you're basically cutting it down into smaller pieces each pay period. So, for example, with the 52-week challenge, every week you would put back just $1 of the week. So you can get a chart, you can mark it off, print out. So for this is week 2, you would save $2. Next week's 3, you would save $3. You would basically just put that money back so that you would have it, but you could find it out of your groceries. Save $2 out of your groceries for the week. Save $2 out of your eating out budget for the week. And then that's where I usually try to pull it from. I mainly try to pull it mainly from my groceries, or we have a little bit of excess from paying down our debts and doing our fixed budgeting that I can put that towards the challenges.
And I think that's pretty good advice. And I know for a lot of people out there, just the idea probably of budgeting is probably making them a little bit nervous. And I think that's why I kind of gravitated to some of the stuff that you were sharing, because for a lot of people that have not had a lot of exposure to money management, it can be daunting. It can be daunting just trying to figure it all out.
Yes. Yes. So I hear that a lot just in the industry that I'm in, is that people don't like to talk about money. They don't like to talk about finances. But I feel like if you try to just break it down into simple steps and start small, then maybe it would give you confidence and you can kind of have the grasp of it. And you're like, oh, I can do this. And then that would help you start other pieces to it. I know in the group, especially like when I start talking about things, I know it probably sounds overwhelming, but try to emphasize, just start small. Look at just your fixed expenses first. Don't worry about sinking funds. Like, don't worry about trying to save anything extra. See where you're at for a while. And then, if you feel comfortable doing that in a month or two, then maybe you might want to branch out to having, what can I do to cut back on my variable spending? Or how about we add one sinking fund? We'll just add Christmas and try to save for that, so that by December, or November, you would have the cash there instead of putting it on a card.
Yeah, well, and I think that's good because a lot of people go into major debt. I don't know the numbers on the statistics, but I've seen them, and I know they're way, 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 way up there on the debt that people, absorb during the holiday seasons. And I think it would be a great idea to be able to start that savings with just something that you're going to be doing anyway.
Yes, exactly.
Those are good. And I love that you gave the very, real world tangible advice of just kind of start where you're at right now, because I know a lot of people, and myself included early on, like I was never taught a lot of financial things. Like I was taught how to balance a checkbook, but that was it. That was literally all I knew. And, I don't know if you've experienced it or not, but it seems like with a lot of people that I know, it seems like the men tended to understand a lot more about the financial world because it was taught to them more readily than it was a lot of the females. Okay. And I'm not going to get into like why that could be or blah, 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 blah. But right. The very real thing is that seems to be true, that a lot of women are, unless they're in the industry like you are not as educated in finances as men typically are. But I think that's starting to change. I think a lot more women are starting to realize that, they're the power in knowing a lot about the financial world, not just only budgeting and saving and, cutting out the coupons to save a couple dollars at the grocery store, but also about investing and things that are kind of like beyond there. Do you find, like with people that you work with, whether it's in your business or just within the group, do you find that it seems to be that way with people that too, that it seems to be a lot more women are kind of like, okay, well, I never knew this, I need to learn this type of thing?
Yes. So I've noticed two different kinds. One is a lot of times where it's more men than it is women. And then the other thing that I notice is that a lot of times it's just one spouse, not two. So regardless if it's the wife or the husband or whatever, it's just that, one person handles everything. So the other person is totally in the dark. They don't have a clue. With talking with other people about budgeting, it's hard for them to possibly get their spouse on board because they don't see the numbers. They don't see why they have to cut back on their spending for variable stuff or just anything because they're not seeing it. So I see that on both sides.
Whenever somebody's in that situation, I know what I would probably do, but I'm not. Like, would you recommend them having one account for themselves where they can at least track their part of the spending? What would you recommend in that kind of scenario?
It works different from every person. Me personally, we have separate accounts completely. He has an account, I have an account. We prioritize, or like he has certain house bills that he pays and I pay certain house bills, and then we split everything else. I've heard some people to where they each have their own individual account and then they have a joint account that goes for all the house bills and their children and stuff. Yeah, stuff like that. But I would say for anybody that has one spouse over the other that doesn't know and you're interested in doing budgeting, I feel like you just need to sit down and talk to them about that. If you could get them on the same page, that would help. If you do have it like your guys' case where you have a separate account and you just put the joint, then yes, you could definitely do that to where you're just tracking your side. The expenses that you put into the joint account will probably always be the same because they're a set amount based on what your bills are for the household. But you can always track your variable spending in your own individual account. This would be your eating out. This would be your shopping. This would be groceries, that kind of stuff. So Absolutely. It could be done one-sided.
Yeah, well, and I don't know that there's necessarily a right or a wrong, as far as I'm concerned, but I know it worked better for us to do it that way just because I know what's coming in, I know what's going out. Right. I don't have to figure it out. I can budget and plan. And obviously, we have different things that we find important personally, and that's okay. So, it was one of those things that it just made more sense for us to go ahead and do separate accounts. So that way I didn't even have to think. I don't care what his focus is. I don't care. We have our joint goals or family goals or, joint household expenses and savings and stuff like that we have, attributed to that. But then, what I decide to do, I can do personally, and he does the same. And that honestly has worked best for us. But we're both very type A.
Yeah.
So all we did when we had joint accounts only was butt heads the whole time about who was right, who was wrong. And we were never going to get anywhere like that.
Yes. We had talked about doing a joint account at one time, but it's for us, it just seemed easier. You pay these and I pay these. And other than that, your money's your money and my money is my money. So sometimes we talk about adding extra, like when we go on vacation or something like that, we would bring in money from each of the accounts. But a lot of times we just try to, for us, it's easier for us to keep everything separate.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I think that's the thing is if somebody's first getting started out is to figure out, number one, what is going to work for you. And that's going to be like what like I just said, me and my husband are both type A.
Type A, yeah.
It will not work because neither of us are going to give up, quote unquote, the power, so it's not going to happen. We will fight to the death on that. So for us and our personalities, it just worked better like that. But for some people, it may work better for them to have that joint account to work as a team. Mm-hmm. And I think, from what I'm hearing you say, it's kind of step one is figure out what works for you. And also it's probably okay to try a joint. If that doesn't work, then try a separate,
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so easy now to get accounts open. You don't even have to go into the bank to do an online, to do an account if you want to open it. So I always recommend do what's best for you. Like you cannot fit into someone else's plan for how they do their budgeting. So do what works best for you and your spouse, or if you're by yourself and your pay, just try to find an easy way to do it to where you're not stressed out about having to sit down and do your budgeting every time you get paid. So.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite savings, I guess, challenge that you've done?
My favorite saving challenge that I've done is one where it's just like different blocks with different dollar amounts. So for that, I like to do it because then I can pick based on what else I have going on at the time, because I may not be able to put back the higher amount. So I'm a pen and paper and I like to highlight and do different colors. So that was my favorite. But when I worked at another W-2 job, me and another employee, we actually did budgeting together, and we would challenge each other and try to save as much as we could. And we would get excited and talk about it every pay period. Be like, what did you put back? Or and like pull out our sheet and show what we did. So that was something I did with her.
Well, and I think that's awesome, because I think a lot of people, when they think budgeting, they're like, budgeting, because it just sounds restrictive. But
yes.
And saving sounds restrictive. But I like the example that you gave, because, it can be fun. And I love the group that you're doing, just because it provides what you just said. It's providing that accountability, that it's making it fun because you're doing it together, and it is not a chore at that point. It's
Correct.
something that you can actually look forward to. I don't know if I mentioned this actually yesterday on another show, but I don't know if you follow the, what's it called? Becoming Minimalist page.
Oh, mm-hmm. I think I do.
They shared something the other day that said something about like mindless spending of just $27.40 a day. You may have seen this, adds up to $10,000 in a year. Yeah. So I was like, oh my gosh, if you flipped that, if you somehow was able to save $27.40, which obviously, depending on somebody's budget, that's not realistic, but just the idea that $27 and $40 doesn't sound like a lot, or $27.40 doesn't sound like a lot, but how that compiles is just, the whole premise behind what you're saying with the savings challenge is it really doesn't have to be a lot. I mean, if you can afford to do $27.40 a day, great. Go for it. If you can't, then, still you do half of that, or a quarter of that, or it all adds up. And I think we forget that these little things turn into big things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you on that. Like, you don't have to do a huge amount. And what I've seen in the past is that people that get started with budgeting, even if they're saving like $100, they're just super excited that they were able to have the commitment, and they were challenging themselves to actually follow through with it. So that's the big thing, just trying to make it a habit of this is what you need to do every time you work on your budget, every time you get paid, instead of just spending that on something, just like a impulse thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I try to tell people, like, don't try to focus on the number. If you can save $5 a week, that still adds up. That's $20 a month, and times that by 12, you still have quite a bit there. So that's what I usually try to tell people on that part.
Yeah. Well, and I know, there used to be that old adage, a penny saved is a penny earned. My grandpa used to say that all the time.
Yes.
And I mean, it's even more than a penny if you think of inflation and taxes and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it is that thing. And I think a lot of people do mindlessly spend just unless they start doing a budget and they start really being honest with where their money's going. And, it's funny, even when I got to the point where I thought I was good with money, quote unquote, there was certain bad habits I still had. I would forget to go over my credit card statement. Yeah. I wouldn't even look at it. I just would pay it, not even look at it. And I would end up finding something way later, like 6 months later. I think they only go back 3 months or something, that had been charged in my account every month. Yes. I didn't even have
a monthly subscription. Yes.
Yes. It's like, and I think those are some things that I think it's a good habit to get into, to not only budget and save like we're talking about today, but, to make time to go over that bank statement, because, things happen, charges end up on there that aren't supposed to be on there, or maybe you signed up for the free trial, the subscription. I've done this before. I'm like, yeah, I'll try it for 7 days.
And then you forget
about it, and then you pay for it forever.
Yes, that's happened to me.
Oh gosh, it was really sad because I got so mad at myself, because I'm like, I decided I'm going to sign up for this now, and I forgot I had already signed up for the free trial, didn't ever cancel. So I've been paying for it for 7 months. Hadn't used it because I forgot I actually went ahead and done it, and yes. I was so angry.
Yes. That's happened to me too. So, but like you said, going over the budgeting, going over your pay stuff, looking at your statements, like you said, I feel like if you get into a habit of that, it won't seem as much of a chore, and you can get it done in less than 10 minutes, just something that you do once a month to kind of go over everything. And then you're like, okay, I'm done for the month, or done for the pay period, or wherever how that is.
Do you set, I know for me, I had to start setting it in my calendar. I use Google Calendar, and actually set it in my calendar, make an appointment with myself, because if not, it'll be done later, and later will never happen.
Yes.
Do you end up doing that for yourself? Or?
I do. So I try to set myself up with the first day, and then I only give myself 2 days to get it done if I don't get it done by that day. So I've got children, and they're busy and things, and plans change all the time. And so I've been known to even take my budgeting book with me to a practice, and I will work on it while I'm sitting there, just so that because I've got that downtime to do it. But I plan myself, my pays are on Friday. So I plan myself to try to work on it by Friday. If not, I have until Sunday to get it done, because if not, it could be Wednesday or Thursday of the next week, and I've got things that need to be paid. I've got auto pays that come out, and I want to make sure that I account for those. So.
Absolutely. Well, and I think everybody kind of has these things that come up, and as far as having family and kids and all the things.
Yes.
And I think that's why it's a good idea to make those appointments. But also what I heard, and I was going to actually say this, but I heard it in what you said too, was be flexible with yourself. This isn't about perfection.
No.
You set the budget, you flunk the budget, whatever, try again, right?
Yes. And I agree too. So you just keep working at it until you find that rhythm and what works for you, because you're not going to come out perfect the very first time. When we first started with Dave Ramsey, it took us 2.5 years to kind of get through everything. Because sometimes when you join these groups on Facebook and you read everybody's comments, it can really be defeating sometimes, because they're so ahead of you. They're so ahead of the game. But they all started where we're starting today. So you just have to kind of keep at it. And like you said, be flexible. Don't be hard on yourself. As long as you keep going at it, I feel like you'll start learning what works best and how it works within your family and your budget. So
absolutely. Well, and I know for me, the more that I started tracking my expenses, the more I ask myself, do I really need this?
Yeah.
Do I actually use this?
Yeah.
Is it worth paying the $40 subscription a month for me to use it one time?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah, I agree. So we kind of went through that too with our family. And so I try to tell my kids, do we need to buy this? The biggest thing right now at our house is streaming services. And so we have almost, I feel like we have almost all of them, but some of it's attached with our cell phone. So it's included, I guess. Yeah. But I try to talk to them about, well, let's cut back on this for the month, or let's see how we do without it for a couple months. And so we've done that before, but we've gotten them all back again. So it might just be something that I'm going to have to learn how to budget within, and maybe we can cut somewhere else. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to stop it for a little bit and see. I mean, if they don't miss it, because I've done that. I got rid of, there was a couple of apps my kids just had to have, got rid of. I didn't even tell them.
Yeah.
I just got rid of it. They still haven't noticed, and it's been probably a year by now.
Yeah.
But it was one of them that every time I brought it up, they're like, no, and it was the younger kids, and it was like some gaming, like little apps that we had.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not that it was expensive. I think it was only like $3 a month for one of them or whatever, but still, they wasn't using it.
Right.
So I just went ahead and canceled it. I thought, well, if they bring it up, then we'll talk about it then, but they still haven't. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things that, you know, yeah, if it's somebody that's older or like your spouse, don't just randomly go cancel something. I wouldn't say that would be a good idea, but, you know, sometimes they might think they want it, but it's just they're like emotionally tied to it. They're not really using it. I don't know if you've experienced this too, but it made me think of, have you ever tried to get rid of your kids' like old toys or whatever, and all of a sudden that's their favorite thing that they've ever seen in their entire life? You know? And I'm like, you've not played with this in like 3 years. Yes. But somehow it's their favorite right now. It's kind of like that. I think sometimes we are emotionally attached to it more than we are actually wanting it, right? We don't actually want it. We're just have this emotional connection. But I mean, I think it can happen with money though. Like there is an emotional connection with the things that we buy or do a lot of times.
Yes. Yeah. I totally agree with that. So I've got you hear about emotional, like shopping, where, you know, depending on how you feel, you might go out and buy something, and it's all impulse. So I totally agree. Yes.
So we mentioned earlier that you have the group. So it's Budgeting 101.
So I just called it Budgeting 101 and it's on Facebook.
Yeah, and it's a great group. I mean, I think you've put some stuff in there that again is simple. That I think really, even if somebody has been budgeting for a while or saving for a while, there's still fun things. They're like, oh, that's cool. That's the reason I even mentioned. I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. I want to print this out and color this. Yes, It just makes it fun. And so, but if you've also not ever thought about budgeting, or maybe I think most people think about it, but it just seems like a lot. This is a good place to start. I do want to kind of switch because I know we'll kind of wrap up here in a little bit, but I do want to switch just so we can kind of talk about your business a little bit. Okay. So I know I didn't even mention that as a surprise. So we'll talk about your business a little bit. Obviously, you have an accounting business. Can you talk maybe about how your business helps kind of the community, or how you got started, or? Okay. So I actually just started this business a year ago. So I've been in the accounting field since 2005, always worked for a small family firm. I had 3 jobs before I did this on my own, 3 different companies I worked for. And I started this in December of 2020. So right in the middle of COVID. So actually I was inside at the bank there with you, with the office. And actually a lot of my clients came, which was wonderful. Let them know that I was leaving. My old employer was great. He helped me let the community know that, you know, I'm starting on my own. And then we actually moved over to the outside of the building. I'm at the old post office in Russellville. So I think it's been really nice here in regards to helping the community out. There's an attorney down in Ripley that is retiring, and he actually has a lot of clients here in Russellville. So he was letting them know, and I think it's been really great because I'm super close to where they're at. They don't have to drive as far with the older community. I don't know. I love it. So it's been going really well. I don't know how else I could help them. I'm trying to. No, I mean, I think that's good. I mean, the main reason I wanted to bring it up is because there are a lot of our listeners. Well, most of our listeners are women. We do get some guys too. Most are women, but also a lot of them are entrepreneurs. Yeah. And I wanted to kind of bring it up because we've been talking a lot about budgeting and, you know, saving, all that stuff on kind of from a personal standpoint. But I want to kind of transition for a moment, kind of into the fact that you also are a business owner, because I think it's important to mention that too, because you can take these same ideas that we were just talking about for personal and utilize it in your business. Is there a way that you do that that's different than how you do in your personal life though? No, I pretty much keep everything the same. So I have fixed expenses within my business, you know, like subscriptions that I have to renew every year, my rent every year, insurance every year. That's the same.
The only thing that I can really change would be any like supplies that I would purchase. But when I started this business, I sat down with my husband and we discussed what we was going to do. And then I tried to do an estimate of how much did I think it was going to cost to start out. So, and then, just using the estimate of like my clients that would come over, how much would I have in income? Would I be able to come out in the black? Because I didn't want to be a loss for the first year. So just trying to watch what I spend. Now this is going into my second year. I have a better idea because I have that whole year from last year to kind of look back at, and it helps me budget and, forecast what I'm expecting for 2022. So, but it's pretty much the same. The only other thing that I would say in regards to it is that I personally, on my side, I figure out my self-employment tax, but that might be going too much into the numbers because I'm real anal about it. And I want to make sure that I'm not going to owe at the end of the year. So 2021 is the first year that I'm not going to have an actual paycheck. I'm not going to have any federal withholding. So I've had to pay estimates in. So in regards to budgeting for my business, it's pretty much the same as I do my personal, but I also take it a step further by trying to figure out how much taxes will I owe at the end of the year. And then I've been paying my estimates in just because I don't want to owe at the end. So I'm nervous
I think
about
for
that.
a lot of people are not into that world though. They're like, no.
Yeah,
I think you're sitting there saying that's making me nervous.
Yeah.
I would be like trying to calculate it out. And they would be like,
I know nobody wants to talk about that. So, but since this is what I do, I'm just like, you know what? Yeah. I'm going to figure. Like I budgeted down to like my deduction, my children, how much I'm going to get for them, how much I brought in. So I've got it on an Excel sheet. So I like just plug the number in and it figures it for me. But I had to create it. But it just gives me a little bit more peace of mind because I don't like not knowing until the very end. So
no, I think if you know how to do that, that's definitely a way to go. I do not, so that's why I'm not doing that. So, but I mean, I love that you mentioned that you sat down with your husband, kind of went over a budget before you even started. Yes. I think that's huge. I did not do that. Yeah. That would have been great if I did. I did not. I fly by the seat of your pants. Let's go big or go home type of mentality. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of find themselves in the same predicament sometimes. It's not like you did it the right way, but that you get super excited, you're ready to start your business, you spend all the dollars, and then you're like, well, crap, that was really expensive, and I didn't get what I thought I was going to get from it. And I know who was I talking to? I was talking to another business owner not that long ago, and we were talking about how, at the very beginning of our businesses, we kind of done some of the same things. We were so excited, we bought all the like pens and shirts and mugs and everything because we were excited because we did it, and it's good. It's like, hey, we did it, but we spent so much money. Nobody cared. Nobody wanted our mug with a logo on it. Nobody cared. Nobody even knew who that was. We had just started. So I mean, I think there's a lot of people that kind of fall into that, but making yourself sit down and make a budget if you haven't started yet before you start is definitely the way to go. But if you're like me and you kind of already made that mistake, and it's never too late to go ahead and make that budget, because I think it's a game changer, really. If you know bare minimum what you need to have to be able to get started. Number one, it gives you something to work. It gives you something that you need to work toward, and everything past that obviously would be profit.
Is extra. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. So it took me a month just to get my husband on board. So this was like constant, like discussing it with him. And so he wanted to see the figures. And since I'm responsible for something in the household, he's like, I don't want to carry the load by myself. So that was the main reason that the budget came about. It wasn't because I thought of it beforehand. It was just the fact that, hey, we need to see how much do you realistically think you can bring in, because you still have some of the budget to pay, household bills to pay, and I can't carry it all by myself. So that's the real reason why the budget came. It wasn't that, oh, I'm going to start a business. Let's start with step one and do this budget first. No, it was mainly just trying to give him an ease and a sense of peace that it was going to be successful and that I wasn't going to fail, to start off with.
So just you need to go home and be like, thank you very much. That actually helped me out.
Yes.
I think it's good. And I like you mentioned too that, you've got a full year in.
Yes.
So at this point in time, you can look back and be like, okay, what was great out of that? What did I, under budget on? What did I over budget on? And be able to tweak that, because, I think a lot of newer business owners don't realize that, even if you are the type of person like, oh, and, I need to have a budget before I start. it's going to take a little bit of time to be able to figure out, okay, is that realistic or not? Those are projections, but where am I actually hitting, and be able to tweak it from there. I know, I got the cafe. The cafe's not even at a year yet. And I keep trying, like, I'm an analytics person. I like looking at the analytics and figuring it out. I still haven't figured it out. And I keep telling myself it's okay because I'm not a year in. But it's anything that's like service based like this, like, like hospitality industry is all over the place anyway. But it's like kind of one of those things that, when we get a year in, we'll be able to go back and say, okay, well, we over projected on this, under projected on this. Yes. And, but to be able to at least have something to start out with, I still think is huge.
Yes, I totally agree. So like the only other thing that I would say in regards to what you said is currently right now we're just dealing with COVID. So even if you were to have a year in and you have a lot of fluctuations, some of that could be because of outside circumstances. So, hopefully once all of this is gone and it's kind of back pre-COVID, like, how the cafe would have done or how my business would have done, would you have had more traffic, So I feel like some of it's kind of skewed now. So when you try to do any type of forecasting, but in my line of work, there's a lot of people that still need to get taxes done. I help a lot of businesses try to keep their books, and accounts balanced for them. So I know that I'll always have business. It's just whether or not I'll have a lot of clients or little clients. So.
Absolutely. Well, and I think being able to have a goal again of where at least you need to hit. If you know you need to have, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 10 clients minimum.
Yes.
Then you need to have 10 clients minimum.
Yes,
I love goals and I love bite-sized pieces. And I think that's why I was really drawn to, some of the stuff you were sharing in your budgeting group. Are you going to do a separate like business budgeting group, or are you just going to keep it all under one?
I think I'm just going to keep it all under one. I actually haven't mentioned anything about budgeting on my business Facebook page at all, but I had thought about maybe talking about it, and then if anybody else wanted to join the group. But the business side would pretty much be the same unless somebody actually wanted, like, I could give them my spreadsheet on how I figure up the federal taxes. But sometimes I feel like even when you do that, there's still questions or still confusion. Yeah. So it's better to do that more one-on-one than say, here's my sheet. You just have to plug in a few numbers and they'll see it, but then I feel like they don't understand it. And that's just the type of work, because I'm doing something, this is what I do for a living. Because sometimes when I talk to clients, they're just like, oh my goodness, you're so good with these numbers, or it just comes off the top of your head. And I'm like, well, this is what I do for a living. If I was a nurse or, a mechanic, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't be able to do those things. And you might be excellent at it because that's what you do for a living. But I get that a lot. So I think I'm just going to keep it all together. I'm not going to worry about trying to do a separate one, because if I do the business one and you get business clients in there, they may not all be on the same level. So what you're talking about, they might get confused. They might get lost. I would rather someone just ask me one-on-one and we can discuss it that way. So.
Well, that kind of leads me. Do you work with clients only locally, or do you work with them anywhere, like virtually?
I work with them virtually. So the one thing that I wanted to definitely set up here was being able to work remotely, so that, again, going back to my kids, we had to deal with COVID year. Oh my goodness. And at home school, everything like that. So, and where we live, it's pretty rural. We have snows, we don't have very good, cleaning up stuff. So I want to be able to work wherever I'm at, whether I'm here at the office or I'm at home. So everything that I have just about is all online based, to where if I'm not here at the office physically, I can still do the work. So right now I have clients in Texas, I have clients in North Carolina, and then I have clients locally here. So, but I could work with anyone remotely as well, or virtually as well.
If somebody is interested in maybe finding out more about it, do you do consultations, or how does that work?
Yep. So I do free consultations. You would basically, if you wanted to come in for an appointment, I make appointments through the week. Or if you wanted to do it through Zoom, we can do that too. And just let me know what you're wanting, and then tell me a little bit about your business, what questions that you have, what specifically are you looking for, and then we can kind of go from there.
And, just to kind of clarify, you do bookkeeping, you do tax prep. What else do you do?
I do tax preparation and bookkeeping. I also do payroll services. I help businesses start out. So like just yesterday, I had 2 people here for business. I helped them set up their LLC with the state of Ohio. And then once that's been approved, like today, it was approved. Today, I went ahead and got their federal EIN number. And then from there, they would go to the bank and open up a business bank account. So I kind of help or guide people that are interested in doing or starting a business on what steps they need to take. Just in my experience of doing this, I find out a lot of people are super excited about starting a business and they're very good at what they do for that business, but the paperwork or the behind the scenes is not so great. So, or they might not know that they're supposed to do this step or something like that. So I'm just kind of there to say, these are the things that you need to do, or I can help you do them and go from there.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I always say that somebody starts a business because of the one or two things that they do amazingly. And it definitely doesn't mean that they do all the things amazingly.
Right.
And if you're anything like me, you find out all the things that you suck at pretty darn quickly. It was kind of like, I was shell shocked when I was like, oh, okay. Because when you're working for someone else, you forget all the things that are going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
Until you step on your own, you're like, oh yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yes.
No idea.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's great. And I'll make sure that the links to be able to connect with you are in the show notes. If you're listening to this on the podcast platforms, the link to get in touch with Mary to be able to book a consultation will be in the show notes. We're live right now. This will be airing on the podcast, and it'll be available on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcast places I don't even know. But it's been great having you on today, Mary. Super helpful, super useful. Make sure that you look up Budgeting 101 and join that group and print out the little page so you can color the squares.
Yes.
And that's my favorite part. I like to color. So.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. We will be back live again next week, next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until next time.